First of all, I would like to thank to the organizers of this beautiful Congress, and I'm honored to have the chance to talk to this audience. I will be talking about the correlation, possible correlation between vitamin D and the OCD in childhood. I will be talking about the vitamin D first and its synthesis, and then central nervous system and neuropsychiatric disorders. I will be giving some brief information about OCD, then their relationship. Then I will be finishing the presentation with our study. As you all know, vitamin D plays an important role in the regulation of calcium and phosphor. When we look at the synthesis, 7-dehydrocholesterol in the epidermis, ultraviolet B lights, the sunlight, chorocalciflora, vitamin D3. Then we can get some vitamin D from the diet. Ergocalcifolate has plant resource, and we can find it in some mushroom, fungus. Cholecalcipolis has animal resource. When we look at the total vitamin D level, 80–90% of them are synthesized from the light, sunlight. If we don't get the replacement treatment, only 10% may come from the diet. Then they can all combine and go to liver, and with the enzyme cholecoside, and then it goes to the B-alpha hydroxylase 1.25 hydrochloresis D3, and the form we measure in the blood is hydroxy D3, and the active one is 125 dihydroxy vitamin D3. And vitamin D has important effects on the brain as well, other than the muscle and skeleton system. Central nervous system, and is being examined also, and their correlation with the vitamin D. It's a neurosteroid hormone and immune modulator agent. It's accepted as it is because D vitamin receptors were discovered, and through them gene regulation, gene transcription is regulated, and it has genomic effect, and it's a steroid type hormone. Therefore, it's a vital hormone or a hormone. And what are the effects on the central nervous system? It plays an important role in regulation of the functions. Therefore, for a normal brain development, vitamin D is of great importance for us. The brain is the target organ. In Alice and et al. In 2004, Bil-alpha microNAS enzymes, especially in the hypothalamus and substantia nigra, in the dopaminergic neurons, there are vitamin D and enzymes in the frontal region and some other regions of the brain as well, but the most important amount is in the hypothalamus and the other one. And 25-oxyhydroxin D3 is going in the bloodstream, then it becomes active vitamin D, and this stimulates the developments, and then synaptics, the calcium sterilization and the regulation of neurotropic factors, neurotransmission, and along with the neuro effects and anti-inflammatory effects. Vitamin D has serious effects on the brain, and vitamin D has also an effect on the neuropsychiatric disorders because it has huge effect on the brain. When we look at the adult literature, schizophrenia, depressive disorder, and seasonal affective disorder, and also neurocognitive disorders, there are correlations of vitamin D with these disorders. And when we look at our own, the speaker is too fast. When we look at the pediatric and adolescent psychiatry, we have our studies. There is only one study about, it's a PANDAS study, and this was conducted in Turkey, and PANDAS OCD and the healthy control cases were compared. In the PANDAS, vitamin D level was low but statistically insignificant, and there is no other study. And OCD, we know about them. It starts at the childhood. It's resistant to the treatment. It's a neuropsychiatric disorder, and it affects 2 to 3% of child neighborhood population. It is frequent, but we don't know the etiology. Maybe vitamin D insufficiency. Can it be a risk factor in the pathophysiology of OCD? Why OCD and vitamin D intersect? Because neurotransmitter window exists in OCD. Serotonin, dopamine, and glutamate have their places in the OCD, and they work through transmitters, and the studies show that vitamin D has tyrosine hydroxylase enzyme. What is tyrosine hydroxylase enzyme? Dopamine noradrenaline synthesis in cascade, the speed limiting enzyme, and there are some cofactors, folic acid, niacin, and ferrum, and tyrosine Hicks picoplus, there is picofactor, and it is vitamin D. The vitamin D has an effect on the dopamine, and it can result in OCD, and it's valid for serotonin as well, because the speed limiter, tryptophan hydroxylase, is regulated by the vitamin D, and it can affect the serotonin concentrations along with the serotonin and dopamine. Vitamin D insufficiency may result in OCD. Neuroprotection, the studies show us that the free oxygen radicals and the OCD can be interrelated, and we know that in the insufficient vitamin D, glutathione antioxidant defense mechanisms get weaker, and dopaminergic neurons are important for us, and along with the free oxygen radicals, they can be given damage. And again, in the neuroprotection level, we see nitric oxide. Normally, vitamin D, it can be induced nitric oxide synthase inhibitor. When there is existence of vitamin D, synthesis is less, and the secretion of the nitric oxide is increasing a lot. And we know that nitric oxide in oligodendrocytes and the neurons, if it is excessive, it can result in damage. And when we look at the literature, high nitric oxide levels and OCD can be interrelated. Vitamin D, OCD can intersect here as well. Again, at the level of neuroprotection, neurotrophin, you see that, and the studies show us that vitamin D, neurotrophins have an effect on that, and especially NGF, NT3, and G, D, and F synthesis increase. And the literature says us that in the OCD cases there might be a change in the neurotrophin levels. The OCD and vitamin D intersects at this level. As you can see here, with various mechanisms, it has neuroprotective effect, and in the insufficient vitamin D, neuroprotective effect is weakened, and it might have a relation with the OCD. There is another intersection point, it's neuroanatomy. Basal ganglion's role is very clear in OCD. Basal ganglions, neuroanatomic studies, thalamic structures, cortical structures, they're all important. And as I stated at the beginning of the presentation, vitamin D's breakdown in the brain, substantia nigra, in the basal ganglions, and anatomically there is an overlapping, and the vitamin D insufficiency against the toxins, dopaminergic neurons, and they are more sensitive to the damage, and they can get damaged more easily, and it can play an important role in the OCD etiology. In 2012, there is a clinical study in the insufficient vitamin D. There is a specific damage in the inhibition. Therefore, OCD and autism disorders can be seen. The stereotypic types, repetitive movements, or the convulsions might be interrelated. And we are looking at the intersection points, and we prepared a study. There are 60 OCD cases and 60 healthy cases. These are the forms and exclusion criteria. And one of the control cases, the blood amount wasn't enough. Therefore, we were left with 59 cases. And when we look at the socio-demographic data, there wasn't any difference between the OCD and the healthy control group. And we will discuss the results of the study. There's a meaningful significance in terms of dressing. We know the socio-cultural characteristics of our society. And it is different in the OCD. There is no difference in the levels. And what?
15.88 nanogram per milliliter in average, but statistically, as Adana's study, we couldn't find any statistical difference. Level is lower, but not statistically significant. Today's vitamin, there is not a threshold value for vitamin D deficiency. Different associations, different institutions are giving various ratios and various threshold values. And mostly American endocrinological society values are using. If it is over 30, it means normal. Below 20 is deficiency. There is a lack, and between 20 to 30 it is deficiency. But there is not a consensus here. When we looked at our study, 1588 and 1821, the both levels OCD included. There was a vitamin D deficiency. We looked at the factors which can cause this. First, one of the most important factors was the vitamin D deficiency is seen very frequently in various places of the world. In the studies with children and adolescents, 7.68% was the deficiency, and failure was 18. Percentage, and in Turkey it was found that around 60% vitamin D inadequacy. In another study by more than 746 healthy children, the vitamin D inadequacy was 93 in spring and 71 in fall or autumn, and this might have an effect on the result of our study. And second factor is the mathematical and geographic situation. We are in the northern hemisphere, and between 21st of June and 22nd of September we are in summer. What is important in vitamin D synthesis is sun, so the seasons are very important. We didn't take our bloods in between April and September, but we took in early spring, late winter, and in autumn. We couldn't take them all in one time. So this might have an effect on our blood results. Also, mathematical location is important for us. The studies show that in certain studies, 33 or 30 to live over the 33rd or 35th parallel is a risk factor, and as a country we are actually over the 33 or 36, and we are all under risk. And the province in which we worked was in the 39th parallel in Elazığ. To make the study in Elazığ brought about an extra risk. This might have another effect on our study. While we were evaluating with Professor Ipek, the most important restriction is in the socio-cultural features of our country. In healthy control group, closed garments were higher, with wearing more closed clothes create vitamin D inadequacies. If we couldn't find a significant difference, maybe we could find a more significant result. This was one of the most important limitations of this study. Another limitation in vitamin D synthesis, the form taken from diet and the solar light is important. We couldn't evaluate the exposure to sun formally, and our case number and sample group was limited. At the end, today we know that vitamin D has very strong effects on brain, and this implies that there might be a relation between OCD and vitamin D. And etiology of OCD is not known actually. So for both etiology and treatment of OCD, it is very important to reveal the relationship with vitamin D, because it can help in treatment as well.
And we need more control studies in this field. Thank you very much.